Welcome to the Culture is Healing podcast, brought to you by Checking In. At Checking In, we create customized wellness apps for First Nations communities, guided by relationship, trust, and community knowledge. We are also grateful to share our Pathways to Healing tool, which supports frontline and support staff in helping community members access healing houses more quickly and with care. To learn more about our work, please visit www.checkingin.co. Thank you for being here and for spending time with us. I hope you enjoy the episode. Aichka. Ait squel siamnes ya antapa hokoletsa ani stamines halalt kawatsen liaxen. Hello, friends and family. It's nice to be here with you again. My traditional name is Hokoletsa, and my English name is George Harris Jr., and I'm calling you today from my home here in Staminas. This is the community that my father is from. This is the community that my mother married into, and this is the community that my siblings and I were raised in. I belong to George Harris Sr. and my late mother, Sylvia Harris. And my grandparents from my father's side of my family are the late Lawrence and Irene Harris. And my grandparents from my mom's side of my family are the late Bernard and Nora George. And my familial connections to Halalt come from my mom, Sylvia, and my grandma, Nora. And my connections to Kawatson come from my grandpa, Bernard. And through both sides of my family, I have familial connections to Liaxin. And the name Hokolitsa, that's a name that's been passed down for many generations throughout my father's side of my family. I have the honor and privilege of being able to carry that name along with my father, as well as a few other family members. And once again, my name is Hokolitsa, and I am the host of the Cultures Healing podcast. And I have the honor and privilege of being able to sit with Aaron Pete. And I would love to open the floor and allow him to introduce himself to you all.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Aaron Pete. I am the chief of Chawathal First Nation out in Hope, British Columbia. I also host a podcast called Nuanced, where we speak with people from various backgrounds on the issues facing Canadians and North Americans. And it's a pleasure to be here today.
Aichka. Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to come and sit with us. We'll hop right into it, and you know, we always take the opportunity to share a little bit about our podcast and the name we chose for our podcast is Culture is Healing. That is a saying that definitely holds a lot of strength for a lot of our Indigenous communities, and and understanding that there had been so much harm that had been done to our people through colonialism, and the harm that had come from like residential schools and from the potlatch bans, and there was so much done to try and keep us away from our culture, and so we are all doing our best to find our way back to finding that strength, to find healing in our culture. And so that's kind of how we came about our name as Culture is Healing podcast. And so when I say that phrase, culture is healing, what does that bring up for you, Aaron?
That's a good question. I think I would start. I did a lot of research in school at the University of British Columbia on economic development, but also just the history of Indigenous people. And I agree with you. And I think just sifting out exactly what culture is would be my first step. And to me, for Indigenous people, the culture was both the language, but the language that they placed onto the land. And so one area that I find really fascinating about Indigenous languages is that the language also was a roadmap. Like you think for 10,000 years, people traversed North America without Google Maps. How did they do
Mm-hmm.
that? And they created, I think, moral stories that would be the equivalent of like the Bible for religious people who are Christian or Catholic or other denominations. They have stories about how to live a moral life. And I think indigenous cultures have the same, but it's written on the land. And so,
Mm-hmm.
as I listen to our knowledge keepers, a lot of their stories tied to two sisters and how they interacted and how they formed great mountains within our region. And we have a story within our region of the generous man and how he always gave back and he always supported the community and he always made sure that the most vulnerable had what they needed and lifted them up, and everybody respected this generous man. And where he died, a red cedar tree grew. And red cedar trees are incredibly important to my region. They're incredibly sacred, but that has a deep tie into the idea of Jesus Christ within the Bible, this idea of a generous man. And so I think moral stories are often how we understand our history. And the other piece that I just found fascinating is that those types of stories are easier to pass down when they're spoken.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the problems you'll see with something like Shakespeare is nobody really knows what he was talking about because the way he spoke and the way he wrote isn't current, but we all know Shakespeare is important. We just don't know why. And so with indigenous language, it would have been passed down. I would have told you a story about the region and about the history, and then you would have been able to ask me questions. What about this? What about that? And I may have updated and tried to make it more relevant to you and your circumstance, but that's why oral traditions last so long and can be so vibrant, and why it takes something like colonization to negatively impact those stories. It takes a huge change in a very quick amount of time for those stories to be impacted. And now you see across North America those stories being revived and
Mm-hmm.
people starting to reconnect with them. Because I do think the reason that they took our culture from us was because that is your lifeline out of so many challenges. You look to these stories as to how to navigate problems. And if you take that away from a people, they have nothing else to turn to. They kind of have to listen because they don't have another framework by which to analyze the information in front of them. And we have only a few elders left within my region that really know these stories, that really know the language.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important that we try and preserve those and get it shared out as widely as possible, because we're kind of the generation where if we don't do that, it's going to be very difficult to undo these impacts. And so that's what it makes me think of when we see the addiction crisis on reserve, when we see the crime rates on reserve, when we see the education rates on reserve. To me, a lot of that is like we're not giving clear guidance to young people on what living a meaningful life looks like. And I'm very hard on the boomer generation because a lot of their philosophy was do what makes you happy. And I think that's a terrible framework in which to live your life. Our elders didn't live that way. Our 7 generations back didn't live that way. They did what was meaningful, what was responsible, what would have the greatest impact for the next generation. They sacrificed so their kids could have better and their grandkids could have better. We've somewhat lost that in the West, and so I see there being a lot of opportunities to learn specifically about how to treat your elders for wisdom, how to take care of your young people so they can change what ails the community. Like all of those lessons, I think, are what I look at when I look at the culture, and what we need to change if we want to improve, for me, the living conditions within my own community.
Mm-hmm. Hachika, thank you for sharing. Yeah, and I really commend you for saying that, and some of those adaptations that are having to be made to continue to uh, keep our young ones and our others engaged in our culture. And I had a brief moment to share with you previously, some of the work that we're doing at Checking In. We've created a wellness app for indigenous communities, and the framework is called Culture is Healing for this app. And it's really an opportunity for communities to preserve like language and culture and traditions in a more modern way. So we're able to sit down and have our elders and knowledge keepers share those stories that are for future generations. And it's something that's been really impactful for the communities that we're engaged with, and have the opportunity to sit down with and help them preserve their traditions and their language. And a lot of it really does, very much like you're saying, ties back to nature, and ties back to what Mother Earth has for us, and we're the stewards of the land. And so we have this amazing opportunity to be able to work with a lot of communities to do all of that work. And also loved some of those conversations you're having, and bringing up some of the harder difficulties that are happening in a lot of our communities across Turtle Island. Talking about the drug and opioid crisis, and um, also we have one of our newer tools that we've been working on for a couple of years now is a tool called Pathways to Healing, and it's a tool that has been um, created alongside the Squamish Nation to help the helpers, so a lot of the staff in community, to really help them get our relatives into detox and treatment centers. And so it's been amazing to work with them, and now we're starting to do this work out in larger out in communities now, out across BC. And uh, we're also, branching off of that, creating some other tools to really help wrap those relatives in love and in care. I'm taking a look at the continuum of health for these individuals who are going off to treatment, like taking a look at what are the things that we can do to set them up for success as they transition from detox to treatment. And then taking a look at the housing situation for our relatives. What does that look like for them? Like if they don't have anywhere to go after they come out of those treatment centers, where are they going to go? Taking a look at a post healing care. What does that look like for our relatives? What kind of supports do they have? Are they going to be accessing, some form of AA, or are they going to have other support groups? And so I love hearing you talk about those harder issues, because that's what our people have been dealing with for quite a number of years. And even if you take a look across the province in general, it was just mentioned, not too long ago, that our peoples in general, not even just First Nations people, just people in BC in general, have been dealing with this drug and opioid crisis for over a decade. How many people have we lost? How many of our own relatives have we lost? And so I really appreciate you and raise my hands for you for talking about some of these harder subjects. And just wanted to get some of your insights of maybe some of that work that's happening for you and for your community to try and tackle some of those harder subjects.
Absolutely. Well, first I'll say that like I went to school for criminology and criminal justice where I focused a lot on the crime element of this, and I do think that a supportive health approach is needed, but I also just think that like you need you need a really clear plan. And I think that's one challenge so many communities have because you have so many issues that you need to address, like you named housing. I don't think most people understand how housing works on reserve and how challenging it can be to create more housing, to maintain it, all of those pieces. And so when I came onto council back in 2022, we committed to renovating all homes in the community because many of them had mold, mildew. Like we had issues where the water heater was way too close to the wood stove. And so the water heater was melting as a consequence. And so things were just not built properly within our community because on reserve you don't have to build to the BC building code. And so people came in and did very sketchy work. And so we have 89 homes in the community. We've renovated 45 of those to date, with the
Mm.
rest with applications into Indigenous Services Canada. So the first thing is making sure people have a place to live that's safe. Then, and so we're working on that. We're bringing new housing online through BC Housing. We have 31 new units, 104 new beds coming online in about 2 years, and then 5 more CMHC approved homes that are all 4 bedrooms. So we should have around 150 new members coming home, or addressing the overcrowding condition. So I think that's pillar one: is people need a place to live
Mm.
that's clean, healthy. Because I've lived in some pretty not great places, and your own health and sense of self worth is impacted based on where
Mm.
you live. So that needs to be addressed first. Second, you need educational opportunities. First, I've done an economic development plan in consultation with my community to understand what jobs do they want, and then we need
Mm.
to start offering training and education resources so that they can go get those jobs. So very
Mm.
clearly, our community is interested in retail opportunities, tourism opportunities as kind of their 2 main pillars. So we're working on bringing a hotel to
Mhm.
Hope, British Columbia, and offering that training now so that there are those opportunities. And then the other one is childcare. People can't
Mm.
work full time jobs if they're taking care of their children. And I have a mixed relationship, I'll be honest, about childcare, because I think the people who treat you best are usually your family and your parents. And so
Mm.
there's this balance that you have to find in people having their children attend like daycare or something like that while they're working or something. But just making sure the culture, I guess, is the most valuable piece when they're at daycare, when they're having that support, is that they're still getting educational benefits. And so we have 48 new childcare spaces coming online in about 18 months. And so that
Mm.
should really allow parents to be able to work full time. And so that's kind of the broader vision: is get the housing, get the childcare, create the educational opportunities so that they can go have full-time employment. And the more I've seen that, the more I've toured other First Nation communities, when I see the ones that really stand out, the thing that they got right is parents are working full-time jobs, making money, and making sure that their kids have everything that they need and want in their lives. And that really just changes the path for young people. The challenge I see within my own community is the parents are on social development, and they literally teach their kids to rely on social development. They say, don't worry about it, you don't have to work, we'll just set you up with that. And while the band is there to support them, you really miss out on your own gifts when you're told you don't have to push too hard, and that there's always going to be a resource out there. And so that's kind of the nuance of the culture piece that I think we need to encourage. Like I visited Squayala First Nation, Shiakton, Asoyus, West Bank, and what they're really figuring out is just parents that are proud of the work they do and the impact they have really raise phenomenal children. And then those children just don't come with the same proneness to drug and alcohol use,
Mm.
depression, addiction, anxiety. Like in Hope right now, one of the things that came out like a year and a half ago is that our youth have the highest suicide ideation rate in all of British Columbia. And that was shocking to me. But the other piece was just heavy. Was there was no like step two. They released this report, and I was like, okay, what's the district's plan? What's everybody's plan to address this? And they're like, no, we're just letting you know that this is an issue. And it's like, okay, we need a plan to respond to this. And that's more youth resources, that's more recreational spaces. And I mean, like in the Squamish territory, there's so much like recreational activities, sports, lacrosse, soccer, basketball. And within rural communities, we really have much less of that. And I
Mm.
think that's also one of the cures to so many of these challenges young people face, is showing them that they're good at stuff, giving them the opportunity to see themselves represented in those types of things. So that's kind of our focus right now. We're investing in recreation, housing, childcare, and education right now to try and really set up our community to address a lot of those socioeconomic conditions.
Mm. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, and I think too, like looking back at some of the teachings that I'd received, and I remember in my younger years, my mother had often really pushed hard for me and my sisters to, not only, graduate from high school, but to go to like post secondary education. And, she always, mentioned to us, like, you go out and you do your work, you go to school, and, when you're done, um, getting your degree, like, you come home, you come and help your people, and I think that's something that, really pushed me hard to do the work that I'm doing now. And a lot of that is, really accredited to, my parents, being really, and very much like you're saying, they were very, involved in their work, and they felt a lot of joy in the work that they were doing to help our people. And so that really, pushed me to want to do the work that I did. And previously to, the work I do now at Checking In, I worked for my home nation as a designated band rep, and so I was on the forefront of um, the child and family services sector of work. And, a lot of the work I did was, really focused on, bringing, culture to all of our children in care. You know, there's that really strong understanding from a lot of our communities of, understanding who we are and where we come from. And that was something that was very important to me, that I wanted to share with all of our young people in care. And so I had that opportunity because there was quite a few of these young people who were going through some hardships, obviously, because they were, no longer living with their biological parents, and they weren't living in community. And so there was such a huge disconnect for them from belonging to our people, to our culture, and they didn't carry those teachings. And so I did my best to give them as much as I could, with, uh, compiling a bunch of our songs and stories and some language, in a digital format, and started distributing all of that into the homes that these young people were living in, and sharing it with them, and, begging and pleading with, foster parents to be also share it with them, so that these children can know and understand exactly who they are, and the community they belong to. And, yeah, and so that was just some of the work that I had done, and also, had the opportunity to support a lot of the biological parents, to come back to, um, f- get back on that red road. And so had the opportunity to support our relatives as they, went off to the healing houses around our province. And more specifically, it was a lot of the FNHA, um, healing houses that we were sending our relatives off to. And also, like, taking into consideration like some of those post healing care plans for our relatives. And so there was a lot of that kind of work. And, um, just wondering if you had any thoughts on any of those, types of work as well.
I don't have a lot to add to that. That's not my area of expertise.
Mm. Oh, that's okay. Yeah, and it was just, yeah, it's been something that we've been slowly kind of working on here in our work at Checking In, and helping our relatives getting off into treatment. And we've actually started, doing some work with, it's out in Laleham, which is a healing house here on the island. We've developed a post healing care app with them, and so all of the relatives that are going through this treatment center, or, healing house, they have an opportunity to, once they graduate, they can download the It's Out in Laleham app, and they can carry with them, some of the teachings that have been shared with them in this healing house, and some of those, some of the songs that had been shared with them. and some of the meditations and any of the other things that really help them find healing, they can bring back home to with them to their community. And we were just trying to do our best to help our relatives find success, and very much like you were sharing earlier, to find that peace that gives them more meaning in life, to that helps enrich their lives so that they can go on and um, figure out what they want to do in their lives, whether, like you were saying, like maybe it's working retail, or it's very much like you're sharing, like maybe they're wanting to work in hospitality, tourism, or whatever it might be, and just to find that their strength in themselves. And so yeah, I just wanted to quickly share some of those things that we're working on. And yeah, just thank you for allowing me to share.
Absolutely. Great work.
Mhm. Yeah, and so as we're taking a look, and I was just going to ask if there had been any cultural activities or ceremonies that you've had the opportunity to witness that hold a special place in your heart.
Mm. I think probably one of my favorites that I've attended is the salmon ceremony. I'm
Hmm.
not sure if you guys practice that, but just slowing down and appreciating the life around you. And that I love this. There's the origin story of Stehalis is one that I've referenced a lot, and it's because it's just a good reminder that we are not above all living things. We are a participant, and if anything, we're the most reliant on living things for us
Mm,
to sustain our life. And so the first salmon ceremony, prayer in general, I think is just a really important piece because it's humbling ourselves as leaders, that we don't know everything, we don't have all control, and we really do rely on our environment to feed us. And
mm,
so just taking that time, collecting all of the bones, returning it to the water, just that process of knowing
mm,
how much one fish can serve a people, and understanding how sacred that one life is. I think it's just cathartic for people because we live in a time where you can order a burger and fries so quickly that you don't even realize that there was a cow involved, that there's like, whether you're having a chicken, like there's life involved in all of that. And um
mm,
the fascinating thing about the vegetarian and the vegan movement is just that they're aware of that. They're deeply aware of their impact on life around them. Now, I don't come to the same conclusion as them. Like, I think it's important to acknowledge that life. I'm not a
mm,
vegan or a vegetarian, but you can see that there's something really like religious about that because there's such a care for the life around you, and to want to walk lightly, I think is a real lesson from indigenous culture that I think we should continue to lift up in
mm,
this time of fast culture and trying to have things as easy as possible. And when you can Uber or skip the dishes food so quickly, it's just important to remember that these are all very complex ecosystems, and as humans we have a bad habit of messing them up and not recognizing how profound those are, and the fact that we live on this incredible planet.
mm. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing to think of. And um, yeah, it's so easy to like you're saying, have all of these things at our fingertips. But even just for me, it was like 2 weeks ago now. I'm very blessed that I have a brother who does a lot of every year goes on a hunting trip, and brings back usually a deer, or moose, and so um, our freezer is usually full.
Yeah.
And so um, just a couple weeks back, he gave me quite a bit of moose meat. And so my wife had cooked up a steak for me, and so I just like taking those moments to show my appreciation for all the work that went into it. So I just took a picture and sent it to my brother and just said, "Hey, bro, thinking about you. Um, appreciating all the work that you did to go and get all of this food for me and for dad. And so, yeah, I just, took a moment to slow down and really think about what went into what I was enjoying that evening.
George, can I ask you a question?
Most definitely.
Do you notice? I've heard this from a lot of people who hunt moose and different game. Is that it feels different after you've eaten it, like because that animal was out in nature, exercising and moving so much more than when we have cows that are never able to move very far. That the quality and how you feel after is different. Do you find that?
Yeah, I definitely believe so. And I think there's a lot of other things that come into play too. um we can be more certain that there was no preservatives or anything that goes into that meat. And and I think there's another thing that comes into play too, like we hear from our elders when we have that opportunity to um you know harvest one of those animals, and you show a lot of love and respect to it and thank it for giving its life to help sustain you. And it's often said that you're taking a part of that animal's spirit with you, and it's going to walk with you and help you through the next day or week, or and really help uplift you in with the sustenance that you get from it. And it definitely does feel different from any of the other like meats that we get, because it's a free range animal. It's moving on its own, so it's a leaner meat and it's less heavy, and so it just feels more pure of a meal. Mm. Aishka, thank you for asking. I love it
Happy
when
to.
we get another podcaster in here who's loves to ask questions too. So I love it. Yeah, and so yeah, just out of curiosity too, I was going to ask you, what teachings have been shared with you that have really helped guide you in your day to day walk.
This is going to be a weird one because it's not super indigenous, but one that I think a lot about. That's probably cliche at this point in time, but with great power comes great responsibility from
Love
Spider-Man.
it.
Um, and it's just because I don't live on reserve. I didn't grow up in community. My mom was a product of the '60s scoop. My grandmother went to St. Mary's Indian Residential School, so I grew up in a very Western with a very Western philosophy, and only through being asked by a few of our matriarchs in community to run for council after graduating from law school did I come back to try and support. And through that journey, my guiding ethos has been I do not know what's best for the community. I have no idea. Only they know. And so we did a comprehensive community plan with like 12 different surveys, all requiring over 100 responses, an active transportation plan, a wellness plan, an economic development plan, all based on community feedback, because I really don't know what they want or how they want their community to be shaped. And so my only objective is to hear from the community on what they want and then to just go follow through. And so it's a very managerial approach, I think, to the role. Like as I said from the outset, I'm not the culture guy. Others will be able to lead from that position, but my focus has been get our audits up to date, get housing dealt with, make sure people have a quality of life on the reserve, and then my hope is to pass that on to somebody who is the culture person, so that like I'm kind of here to clean up past issues, administrative stuff. That's kind of how my brain works. And so I know that like the authority I have derives from the members, that they elected me to this position to fix many of these problems, and that I have a fiduciary duty in our legal system to do so. And so that's really my only objective. And I sort of foresee, so I'm 1 year into my role as chief. I probably
Mhm.
have about 2 years left of that term, and then I probably have one more left. And by that time, in about 4 years, I think the community will be okay. And I think
Mm,
it'll be ready for a new leader who can bring more of the culture, the language, the history, the passion for the arts, all of those things, because all
mm,
of those other administrative things will be running smoothly, controlled, and dealt with, so that we have staff capacity on those things. And so I think that's the biggest lesson I've learned, is just I'm just here to be a servant for the people. And I think in our provincial and federal politics, we use the term public servant, and the
mm,
servant term really doesn't get used enough. And I think there's a real beauty in that. Like, I'm accountable to 670 members.
mm,
My job is to deliver what they ask me to do. And if that's responded to well, then they vote me back in and I continue to deliver on those things. But I don't want to be here forever. I think it's very unhealthy when a leader decides that they're going to stay past what their objectives were. And I think I'll be able to achieve those objectives in the next couple of years, if I'm lucky. And if not, then I might need a little bit longer.
mm, Hachka. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I really appreciate your honesty, and I'm sure your community really honors and respects that as well. And I think of some of our teachings that are shared in our communities, where a lot of people and a lot of families are recognized for their strengths, and that's usually what um, our communities ask of them. And so, looking at, you're a very self-aware person, and that you're saying you're not the culture guy, but you're the your strength lies in some of those systematic changes that need to be done in community, where not everyone carries that with them to do those administrative duties, to get all of these audits in line. And you're doing a lot of that good work. And so Heichka, for your honesty, and for the strength that you carry within yourself to do that hard work that not everyone can do. And so I encourage you to continue to press into the strengths that the creator's given you.
Thank you.
Mm. Yeah, and I was just also thinking too, if there's if you had any words of advice to share with our listeners here today, as they continue to listen, and also maybe finding their own strength.
I think I would say our country and our province is about to go through one of the darkest periods, I think, since the Great Depression. Um, the federal government is at a deficit that we've never seen before. It's record breaking. The provincial deficit is record breaking, and neither levels of government have a plan for us to get back. Now, how does that impact you as an individual? It means that the government has likely no more money over the next 5 years for social programs, resources, um, culture, those types of things. That's all about to dry up over the next couple of years. And I say that with a grim perspective, that I think part of that is unfortunately mismanagement, but is that we are going to need Canadians to step up, and First Nations people and Indigenous communities to lead in a way we have not seen in generations, because things are about to get challenging. Like, I know so many of my members are dealing with the cost of living crisis. They can't
Mm-hmm.
afford groceries. They can't afford hockey programs for their kids. There's so many challenges already facing our communities, and it's all about to get so much worse. And so it's important that you figure out what your skill is, what your gifts are, as you just described, and use those, share those, because our country is going to need them desperately. We are going to need people who want to work hard, who want to lift things up. And I see that in my community so often. Young people, they want to work hard, they want to impress their elders, they want to become leaders, they want to make a difference. And so just holding that all true and making sure that everything you do aligns with that. Like, one of the things I credit for where I am in life is I listen to music that reminds me to keep going, to not quit.
Mm.
I work into the evenings every single night. I'm responding to emails. I am trying to prepare presentations. I'm trying to figure out plans and solutions to problems. I'm on the phone constantly. But I got all of those opportunities because I just kept focusing on improving and growing and improving and growing and educating myself and adapting to situations and figuring out how to show up in a room and make a positive impression and how to grow into the person I was meant to be. And I think we all have a faint understanding of who we're meant to be. And elders do such a good job. They see through the nonsense and the personas at times we put on to try and be cool or try and fit in. And they know our gifts. So speaking to them has always been a source of wisdom for me, because they see through at times my nonsense and tomfoolery. They know whether or not I'm on the right track or the wrong track. And so I think just grounding yourself in that and then just figuring out what your why is probably the biggest
Mm,
one. Whether it's your family, whether it's your kids, whoever it is that will allow you to wake up at 5:30 in the morning and work until 7 p.m. Figuring out what drives you every single day, listening to the music that inspires you, watching the movies that inspire you. I just watched The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith.
mm,
Like, those movies are so important because they remind you how much work it takes to become successful and to reach the goals that you yourself set for yourself. Don't follow what society says. Don't listen to what other people tell you to do. Figure out what your real goals are and go chase them, and do not let anybody tell you differently. Don't listen to anybody who discourages you. Just keep persevering, because there was a period there where I was in law school with a podcast, broke, in an apartment living with my mother, and things did not look great. And now I'm living in a beautiful home. I'm the chief of my community, and I'm living a very great life. And it's a pleasure to lead my community. But like, depending on where you find people, you could say like, "Oh, this person doesn't look like they're on the right track," and then they turn it all around pretty quickly. And so, I think that's the important piece: is don't be afraid to go do what everybody else is avoiding doing. Like right now, I don't know if you know this, George, but so many young people don't want to work at Tim Hortons, McDonald's, like that. Those jobs are being outsourced to other people, and I think
mm,
those are great places to build your character, to put in your 10,000 hours, and to build yourself up so you can go become what nobody else can become. And I think we need more and more of that as we face these challenges. And it's so rewarding to put in a good day's work, as I'm sure you're aware. Like, it's just,
mm,
there's something, you can sleep easy when you know you've contributed, when you know you've helped your community, when you know you're doing everything you can to be a good person. There's just something, there's a peace that comes with that you don't get any other way.
mm, Heichka. Yeah, I love it. Thank you for sharing your words of advice for our listeners here today. And so as we're wrapping up, I just wanted to give you an opportunity for our listeners here today who might want to follow your journey as well. And so if you can, share a little bit about your podcast and maybe some of the work you're doing as well.
Happy to. So yeah, I host Nuanced. It's on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, um, and yeah, that's how you can reach me. But thank you, George, for bringing a calmness to this space. As you can see, my cadence, my speed of talking is pretty quick because I'm used to trying to get perspectives in a very short period of time, and I just appreciate the calmness you bring because we're flooded with so much news, negativity, frustrations, fears in our news cycle, and people like yourself slowing the conversation down, holding space for people who are going through their healing journey. I think you bring the right energy to these types of conversations.
Mm. Heichka. Yeah, thank you so much for your kind words. Yeah, and thank you all. I want to thank our guests and thank you all so much for taking the time to come and sitting with us today. And yeah, I hope to catch you all in the next episode, everyone. Take care. Heichka. Hey,